Thank you, dear gentlemen and ladies. For better or for worse, mostly gentlemen, but I see some ladies in the panel and also in the audience, which is great. We have a fantastic panel here. We're going to introduce that in a second. The way we're going to work in terms of our order of the day, we're going to move from the general to more specific. We're going to cover both the technology side, innovation side, as well as move into deployment, issues of operations, scaling, issues of logistics, and the way we move to civil infrastructure as well. But before we move on to the questions, let me introduce our fantastic panelists here. Agris Ķipurs, CEO at Origin Robotics. Hendrik, Sippl, PMP and Airbus Defence and Space. We've got Oleksandra, Molloy, Senior Lecturer at Aviation, University of New South Wales. We've got Kadi, Silde, Director of European Engagement at Helsing. And last but not least, Andis, Ozoliņš, Attorney at Law at WALLESS. Round of applause for our panelists, please. Before we kick off with the first round of introductions and questions, you are more than welcome to send your questions, inquiries, recommendations for the mentee. Why? Because we understand that in this kind of event, we have equally as much as competence, insight and knowledge in the audience as on the stage. So we'd like this to be as conversational as possible. So we have dedicated about 10 minutes of our time together for Q&A from the audience. So please, if you have any questions for any of the panelists, do dedicate them in the questions section so we know who is this meant for. Obviously, we'd like to see more, as many responses from the panel. So we get about 10 minutes for that. If we move quickly, I think we can have about 7 or 8 questions in that span of 10 minutes. So please make sure that you have mentee ready, that we know of that in advance, that you have questions. Without further ado, let us start our panel. Let's keep the conversation engaging and dynamic and moving again from the general to more specific. As said before the panel, we're more than welcome to you to chip in with ideas and insights. I'm not going to sort of each out all of you. But before that, let's introduce each other for the audience and ourselves. So about a minute per bit of context. Where do you stand with drone technology? Especially the focus for us today is the breakthrough, the cutting edge things which are happening both in labs as well as in the real world. So let's start with Agris, over to you, and then Hendrik.
Yes, hello. Agris, I'm with Origin. Origin is a defense technology company. We build advanced autonomous weapon systems that happen to be drone technology enabled. I'm in the business of building autonomously flying systems for a while now. My previous act, AirDog, was the company that built the first autonomously flying system in the consumer drone space. I sold that company in 2020 and then had to go back to building drones again, understanding that Europe is facing new challenges, and the skill set, the expertise that we have as a team, will be in high demand, and that has allowed Origin to grow very fast and be amongst the fastest growing startups in defense tech as of today. Yes.
And now you're here.
And now I'm here.
Hendrik, over to you, Airbus.
Yes, thank you very much. So Hendrik Sippl, I think the word which describes me best is I'm an Airbus veteran. This Sunday I will have my 30th wedding day with Airbus. So I started my career in Eurocopter, today Airbus helicopters, in the system software engineering, being responsible for Tiger and NH90 software engineering. So moved over to NH90 program later on, and also some civil business. I was program manager for airplane doors for Airbus. Recently, or it's already 6 years ago, I joined Airbus Defence and Space. Was first responsible for a transformation program, digital transformation, and since a year now I'm in the business line which is called Future Air Power, where within Airbus Defence and Space we consolidate all our UAS, unmanned aerial systems activities. Not to forget, and you can see it also outside on the booth, you will have also some Airbus helicopter colleagues with a huge legacy of unmanned systems, newly developed, integrated, or also derived from legacy platforms. So thank you for being here.
Thank you, Hendrik. Oleksandra, over to you.
Thank you, and good afternoon, everyone. And it's a great pleasure to be here. So I traveled from Australia this time, and it's a great summit, so happy to contribute. I work as a senior lecturer in aviation at the University of New South Wales at the Australian Defence Force Academy. I lead the Human Factors Research Group there and lead various projects on uncrewed systems, including a Defense Trailblazer project on RES AI theme, on developing AI-based technology to monitor and predict cognitive load, as well as ethical implications for the use of drones, but more broader robotic and autonomous systems. More importantly, as a Ukrainian Australian, I had a deep passion to work on understanding the development of the emerging technologies and uncrewed systems across domains. And I have published the first evidence-based research on the use of drones and lessons learned from Ukraine war, together with Australian Army Research Centre, because that's absolutely important that we continue observing, learning, and most importantly, translating those lessons and act on that. So, yeah, what other countries can do, and the broader perspective, what is happening, what the current trends, that would be my perspective.
Thank you, Oleksandra. We'll hear that a little later. Kadi, over to you.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Kadi Silde. I work for a company called Helsing, which is pan-European scale-up that develops defense AI solutions. And now, if you're asking why I'm at the Drone Summit, we started out as a software company, but once the full-scale invasion in Ukraine broke out, we also moved into hardware production. So we now produce also our own hardware. I'm in contrast to my fellow panelists. I'm from very close by. I'm from Tallinn and from the Estonian MOD originally, have worked in NATO and EU, and now very happy to work in Helsing. Thank you.
Great. So we have 3 panelists here to cover the production side. So that's a strong force in the house. Andis, over to you.
Yes. Hello, my name is Andis Ozoliņš. I'm an expert partner from Pan-Baltic law firm WALLESS, and we are working with businesses, and we have been involved in defense industry for over 15 years, consulting clients, and we provide all sorts of business advice, and with particular emphasis of regulatory compliance. And with the advent of artificial intelligence, adoption of Artificial Intelligence Act, we find that this area is very challenging, and we see that application of artificial intelligence in defense technologies presents a unique set of additional challenges, and therefore we find it very interesting and very important so that emergent technologies are compliant with law as it stands today.
Great. So Andis is going to cover that conversation, has a framework of how to land that in civil, also military context. So since those of you joining us just a minute ago or so, our focus here is going to be on breakthrough technology, and how we define it within this panel, and there are obviously many ways how to think about that, is what is moving the needle, right, at the moment, or is about to move the needle in perhaps 6 or 9 months, because obviously things are developing quite fast, and I think the last 3 years with the war in Ukraine have been a testimony to that, how fast things are picking up, and perhaps technology is moving way ahead of our human capacity in technology to adapt that. So let's discuss the main, perhaps, breakthroughs that you see from your spectre, and as well as from your optics. Where do you think the technology are going at the moment? Let's start with you, Hendrik, and then over to Agris and Kadi.
Yeah. So, I mean, what we see, and what I also recognized this morning, we had very good pitches from the podium discussion with the ministers, and also afterwards. And I would like to cite one from Luke Pollard, Minister of Armed Forces from the UK, who said, we must not necessarily need better drones in future, but we need better systems. And I think from my perspective, the Ukraine war is in many senses the reference of what we see today and what might be also the reality of the future, but not maybe the complete blueprint for future combat scenarios. So what we are ambition for is to support our Air Force in getting the capability for air superiority. When we look in the Ukraine and Russia, I think both don't have really air superiority. This is why we see soldiers in trenches and operating the great drones we see outside. How do we want to do this? We want to do this with collaborative combat aircrafts, something like 3 tons upwards. Also referred
in terms of systems, right?
And integrate these in systems by manned and unmanned teaming capabilities. So beside the fact that we discuss with our customers what is the right maximum takeoff weight, range, and so on and so forth, we innovated a lot in the past years on manned-unmanned teaming, with the platforms we have available. We were able to demonstrate collaboration between classical platforms, Learjet, EC-135, our target drones, in terms of autonomy. So how can I offload the pilot? He is just defining the what, and the drone, the CCA, is defining the how. And then also in terms of teaming. So how can I combine assets with different capabilities, give them a task, and they would perform it autonomously. So manned-unmanned teaming is a great innovation which was evolved.
Coupled with intelligence, obviously.
Obviously also with artificial intelligence. I mean, when you collect huge amounts of data via different platforms, different sensors, I mean, it cries out for artificial intelligence.
Right.
Here we also work together with, for example, Quantum, who have a booth outside. You will see, I think, the vector drone there, which we also put in collaboration with our target drones. So in terms of system thinking, and in terms of manned-unmanned teaming, I think we made a big technology step already, but there is much more to come.
Great. Kadi, and then over to Agris.
Yeah. I'll cheat a little bit, because I'll give you one sort of technological, and then I'll give you one economic sort of breakthrough. The technological one is, I mean, that's not going to come as news to anyone. It's how we operate with sort of in the context of the prevalence of electronic warfare, and how do we operate when our GPS and our communications are blocked, and the fact that we are able to do that. I think that's
not alone. Enemies also, obviously.
Yeah, the enemy obviously is not sleeping either. The economic breakthrough, I would say, is about how we turn, let's say, the economy of war in our favor, and how do we get affordability? How do we get to a situation where we do not need a $1 million system to take down a system that costs in the tens of thousands, right? And equally, also on the flip side, how do we get systems that cost tens of thousands with which we can take down systems that cost?
Are we getting there in terms of affordability?
I mean,
is it getting slowly but surely?
Slowly but surely. I mean, when you're looking at the news coming from Ukraine in the past few weeks, then I think it's getting. We're getting there. When we look at how Ukrainians, with what they're taking down Russian fighter jets, right? We're not fully there yet, but I think we are getting there.
So superiority in the air, coupled systems, intelligence, unmanned and manned. And then looking at the, obviously, pricing and affordability, I think that's we have good start here. Agris, anything to contribute this here? And obviously Oleksandra as well.
Well, those are all good points. I think, if I need to add something to it, I think, at times we emphasize the sophistication of technology. I think what Ukraine war has demonstrated, greatly, is that nothing is more important than getting the job done. And sometimes, the minimum viable product is what you should be focusing on in times like they have, on the battlefield.
Which is speed.
Which is not necessarily always, about over-engineering stuff and, making it commercialized. Sometimes it's about the stuff that works, about the tactics, and that is I think also something that we don't want to overlook, because at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter if it's AI or if it's someone flying it manually, if that is the best way how to get to that cost per successful mission superiority, then that's what you go for. You don't get points for integrating the most advanced stuff in your products. You get those points for getting the job done with the least amount of resources spent doing it. So I think.
Would you think should this define the way going forward as well?
It definitely does define a way going forward, because it's not only about the capability in general. It's also about volumes that you can afford as a small democracy to have. And this war has showed us that capability is great, but you need to be able to repeat that mission
Over and over.
And the task over and over, you know, and it's an exhausting amount of targets that you are facing. So that informs your decision making, you know, as you build products, as you develop, you know.
Kadi, and then comment from Oleksandra.
Yeah. As someone from a software-defined company, I cannot not come back to you. On the one hand, I agree. On the other hand, when we're talking about when we're looking at the speed of innovation cycles in Ukraine and how quickly Russian countermeasures are developed, how quickly you need to adapt, it's very hard to adapt in a scaled way if you need to adapt by changing your hardware. So basically, I take your point, but basically you need to take as much complexity out of the hardware, so the things you need to then update is your software, which obviously you can do much more quickly than hardware.
Oleksandra, 3 comments on a previous question. Comments,
sure.
please.
I think I would like to add to that. We talked about
Great points, by the way. So
air superiority, but for a minute, you know, drones have complicated that field, and we are talking about drone superiority, you know, and who established that drone superiority and that mass that we talked about. And another thing is, if we think about those breakthrough, I think no other conflict actually have demonstrated such a scale and really continuity and use. And we need to remember that it's not about technology or breakthrough, it's about saving lives for Ukraine, and they have saved many lives for them. And if you think about...
why do you think that has been the case? Because of the speed of capacity to be able to adapt?
Yeah, just let's start even from the beginning. If you think about it, Ukraine territory is the second largest in Europe, and if, you know, let's just roughly say like 1,500 kilometers of the front line, and you need to protect all of it straight away at the time and respond to the formidable force. So at some places, of course, there was nothing to defend itself, and you need to think about warfighter because it needs to be at the center. So what is a simple, easy to use, easy to implement, you know, not to complicate, but really to ensure that it's effective and it works, right? So the system that works have adapted and improved. And I think if you think about the change, it's all about being able and willing to learn, being willing to adapt and also iterate, you know, fail fast and change and iterate and scale up.
Which is, again, mindset and culture of the operations on the ground.
Yeah, so, and I think that's important. But another key point, context matters. So we can't just look at the territory like just one thing and we just have one drone and we use it. So just like off you go. So every different specific context of operation and specific unit have their preferred drones. And I think that's how it also has evolved. And it expanded to multi-domain. So from air to, of course, sea and on the ground. And I also think that it's current and it's future of modern battlefields. And I like the point from the morning sessions about the combination of crewed and uncrewed systems. So there is place to be, that's for sure.
We'll go back to that in a second. Andis, over to you. So the legal implications of this fast-paced field. Some are saying, and obviously we're going to get to that perhaps this has been over and over in news that EU is over-regulated. We're, you know, we're not too fast enough where we should be. And then again, we also have liberties and we have values that we want to protect as Europe, especially when it comes to GDPR and civil rights. So where do we stand with that from your legal framework perspective?
Yes, I think well, the fast development presents its own challenges, and with respect to artificial intelligence, we have an EU Artificial Intelligence Act, which applies exclusively to a civil sector. And as concerns compliance in military sector, there's no specific detailed international regulation, specific obligations as regards application of artificial intelligence or autonomous weapons, but there are ongoing discussions at the United Nations level for over a decade, but nothing specific has come out of this.
Which is a good thing or a bad thing from your perspective? It's sort of a little vague.
I think some regulation may be more specific, but at the same time, it can be surely stated that we are not operating in the vacuum, because already existing binding international treaties provide a sufficient tools for states to apply new weapons diligently and to make assessments of new weapons. And what is required already for most states is that they need to make assessment of new weapons, new means of warfare, and such an assessment has to be done at the time when new weapons are implemented, but also when they are changed. And this is particularly pertinent to artificial intelligence because it's new technology and it may not always function as intended, and therefore particular diligence.
Including rogue uses and sort of non.
Yes, uses. And this is similar as in a civil application because European Union does not, in Artificial Intelligence Act, it does not regulate as any specific technology, and it classifies as hazardous certain applications of technology. And the same is applicable to the drone warfare. It depends how the drones are applied and what are the targets and whether they are autonomous and do they navigate autonomously, do they target autonomously, is there a human intervention possible, and so on.
So for non-professionals of us in the audience, what do you think that means for us going forward? Sort of, we don't have much regulation there. We actually can't say that we're too slow. Perhaps is this a little dangerous, or is this as it should be, in the same way as sort of other big countries are giving sort of full speed ahead with development?
I think more specific regulation would be welcome, but at the same time, as I mentioned, we are not in a vacuum, and there's sufficient regulation to, if it is diligently applied according to the international humanitarian law, then the application of drones is
if and when it is applied.
Yes, and I think that so far the autonomy in drones has not been developed so much, but it's a fast-moving field, and this speed of change, it presents a challenge that some applications and some uses may breach international law.
Okay.
We
have been warned. Any comments on this issue? Is this presenting, as in terms of you as producers and production lines, is this an issue that you'd like to comment here? Please go ahead if you
I agree to what you said. I think there is really a threat. I mean, when we now see these drones operating mainly on test bases and not so much on areas which are populated, I see still a big challenge to come to regulations of systems which are not deterministic. I mean, in the old times, you always said test. You could always test each case the software could run into. Now we have systems, or we will have systems, which are not deterministic, which basically reprogram while they're executed in simple terms. Yeah? We have to find either a relaxation in regulations, which would be my preference, and trust in the manufacturers that they somehow deal with the fact if something goes wrong, that there is still a safe operation afterwards. Otherwise, if we over-regulate, then I see really a risk that we cannot get the speed we need.
With your permission, let us park here a little bit.
Okay.
You just said that you would like to see perhaps a little more of relaxation, so that the systems and the legal framework could allow for more freedom that. Do we want to sort of unpack that? What would the benefits of that framework would be over being more regulated?
I mean, what would be the benefits? I mean, we would gain in speed. I mean, what you also said before, we see, and we also discussed it yesterday at the range, at the test range. I mean, the environments these systems will have to operate in will change from one day to the next.
Right.
So we cannot think about developing and upgrading things like we did 20 years ago, where you put the platform down, you requalify software.
So greater autonomy means greater performance.
Say again?
Greater autonomy means greater performance for them, for the systems.
Greater autonomy means greater performance, absolutely. I mean, we also heard this morning from our representative from the MOD, Mr. Peter Persch. At the end, we need to secure that a man or woman is still in the loop for the final decision. But the more data you collect and the more you accumulate at the end, and you compile it down to do I fire or do I not fire? Right. I mean, the AI is doing a lot before.
Agris, over to you. Yeah, I actually want to ask a question to Andris that I'm curious of myself.
Is internal panel happening?
It's an internal panel, but I hope it's of interest to others as well. Tools-wise, Andris, my forecast is that we are very close to companies coming out with systems that in certain tactical environments will be capable of ending the mission or completing the mission without a human in the loop, because the tools are pretty much there already. Yeah. It's about gluing it all together, and it's being done as we speak. So it's going to happen. The question is it like from a legal perspective, from treaties perspective, is it even, is there anything getting in a way for an end user who wants to do it, wants to go down that path, to actually use a system that basically does the decision-making process, has the decision-making authority, and there's no human in the loop, to confirm completion of a mission with a strike?
Well, that's a quite big question. Andis, are you ready for that?
Yes, I'm ready.
Right. Always ready.
The state of the law is such that autonomous systems are not prohibited as such. Of course, there are arguments that based on ethics that life and death decisions shall be made only by humans. But at the same time, we can see that such fully autonomous systems are already in use. And for example, if we take different proximity defense systems on vessels and maybe some systems which shoot approaching missiles, then they have to act so quickly that they are fully autonomous already, but they pose very little challenge and very little threat to civilians. Whereas at the other end of the spectrum, there could be some autonomous drones that are flying in crowded areas, and maybe they have even biometric reading capabilities and searching for a specific individual, and this is quite a scary proposition. And both of these systems are fully autonomous, but the implications and the effects are quite different. And this is why new systems have to be assessed, and what is especially pertinent to artificial intelligence and autonomous systems, that they have to be assessed and evaluated against specific environments and specific use cases.
But not before
they may behave very differently.
But still, the question means technology is there or about to be there, right? That was the question, and the question is whether they will be legal to be deployed. Is that correct reading of your question?
Yes. Have we even fully comprehended that we are very close to actually these type of systems being possible, and have we figured out how do we want to go about it?
So
are we even allowing companies to make those decisions?
And when you say very close, do you mean year, 2 years?
Well, we have the tools. We have the tools. The software is out there. Most of the stuff is somewhat open sourced. You can start playing with the models. You can start, adapting them. In certain tactical scenarios, it will be good enough. It doesn't require, rocket scientists to do it. It's going to be done. So the question is, legislation-wise, do we realize that we are very close to it actually happening?
Do we have a comment there?
Yes. As I said, as the law stands now, there's no specific regulation, and the assessment of the legality of such a system would really depend on its effects. Because at the moment, in general principles of international law apply that require for use of weapons in cases of military necessity. They have to be able to differentiate between civilians and combatants, and the use of weapons have to be proportional. Of course, this is very vague, and one of the advantages of dedicated specific explicit regulation on autonomous weapons would be that there would be a common sort of threshold for all countries, so that all countries would understand it in the same way. But now
that's not going to happen.
It's open to interpretation, and it will probably not happen, and because some countries are trying to gain advantage by using them, perhaps or intending to use in unscrupulous ways.
Oleksandra, comment on that? This is a game changer, obviously.
We'll see. So I think the quick comment is really bringing back to the warfare and how that used as well in Ukraine, what can see. And currently, of course, there are some even companies here in the room who are developing those systems, who are continuously working on these technologies and also advancing. I think that's a key to improving and continue working on these innovations. Are we there yet? No, but I think we are going towards in that direction. And of course, there are, if we think about both AI and autonomous systems, so we've seen some autonomous drones, but it's really like some parts that automate and they perform a specific mission. And of course, in terms of the AI, it's really broad. So I really want to split it into more decision support systems, which helpful, right? And also different new technologies are developing based on the machine learning algorithms. And again, it depends. It depends what we talk about and how that also perceived, started from terminology to a specific part. But importantly, think about whether or not adversary have the same restrictions, legal, ethical, and so on and so forth. And we need to ensure that we need to be in advantageous position. And history teaches us that regulations and laws and legal come afterwards.
So moving forward, we have 2 more questions before we perhaps give it over to the audience. How do we make sure that we're not caught off guard? You, I think, mentioned the scenario, which is a likely scenario, no longer science fiction. So the institutions on the ground, our military forces, administration, what do we have to do that this stuff from the labs and from the private sector comes into the right hands and we're able to use this technology to capacity again to address our adversaries as well? Are we ready to face off the challenges that we have here?
I don't. I will not say that we have the answer yet. I mean, when you talk about institutions, when you talk about our companies, how do we simplify, how do we get adapted? I mean, we have a challenge as a legacy or classical company. We have to simplify. We come from very, very complex systems, systems which have to operate safe with the men on board for thousands of hours, which are maintained for 30 years.
And yet we have to get the job done.
Yeah, for 30 years, but these are not the systems we have to think about. We talk about, exactly, we talk about systems where it is acceptable that we lose it. We have to simplify the product, which will simplify the production, which will help us to scale up the productions. Maybe we think about shells where we put the valuable equipment inside, and when it's broken, we just tear it apart and take the equipment and put it somewhere else. So a lot of
scaling, simplification,
and this will then also bring us speed. What I maybe as one point, what is making it difficult is predictability. So as this was also mentioned by the Netherlands Minister of Defense, Rubens Brakelmans. He said, we also don't know what are the systems we will need in future. And there's a huge variety. And the more complex the systems get, I mean, they could also have a price of 1-digit million euro figure. So you will not easily scale this up to thousands.
Right.
Yeah? So
which is not affordable for small countries as well.
Yeah. So predictability and then also managing the corresponding supply chain is a key challenge where we have to get adapted to.
You from the Tallinn, from Estonia, are we ready, the institutions ready to pick up the technology we have at our fingerprints here?
We're getting there. I think the problem companies bringing sort of disruptive technologies, autonomous systems are sometimes facing, or quite often facing, is they get put into these nice little boxes called innovation programs. And that's all nice if there's a clear pathway to production contracts from there, but quite often there is not. Whereas, where the real stuff happens, frankly speaking, is, when NATO starts planning in NDPP, you get capability targets down to countries, you get programs of records. So how do you get companies developing capabilities such as those that we're talking about into these
And the answer would be from your perspective?
Pardon?
And the answer would be from your perspective? How do we get those capabilities?
We need to, first of all, defense planners need to think about effects. Like what before was perhaps a very elaborate, complicated, a system of systems is now a combination of drones. So you need to think about how you achieve the same effect with other means. If you start thinking like that, then that opens these programs of records up to many more companies than they are right now.
So openness, simplification, and ability. Any questions? Any comments here? No. That was
No, I'm still going back to that, elephant in the room conversation about, human in the loop versus passing the decision-making authority over to.
And where do you stand on that elephant in the room?
I would rather prefer to continue building systems where human is still required to be in the loop.
Even though it might be a hindrance because there's so much intelligence, you have to make a decision.
I'm just afraid that the genie has been let out of the bottle already, and if we wanted to do something about it and keep it that way, so that we can actually keep building systems which require human in the loop. We had to do something about it a long time ago, and I'm afraid that there is no going back, unfortunately, and we will end up, passing that decision-making process over to robots because that's what our adversaries will do.
And we'll be forced to do that anyway.
Yeah.
So our last two comments before we open up the question to the audience. You already mentioned that. What are the one or two main challenges that we have to keep into account going forward? And I think the timeline for this technology and systems in general is no longer 5 years. I think it's a year or two, perhaps even at that. And everyone is more than welcome to comment on that. So what do you think would be one or two main challenges that we have to keep in mind? And perhaps let's take it from yourself and then move into Andis. So you mentioned one already, the unmanned systems, which make the decisions for ourselves.
Yeah, so I think for us that's the challenge, number one. I think that in general I totally agree with software being the differentiator. That's where we invest most of our engineering resources. Software is what gives you that competitive edge, but then at the same time. Hardware-wise, we want to stay light. We want to stay where systems can be produced in quantities and done it at an efficient price points.
Mm-hmm. Hendrik?
Well, I see the challenge in the supply chain. So if we want to scale up more complex systems, when we see how I would not say separated, but the variety of players we have still in Europe, when we see that we have 170 weapon systems in Europe compared to not 40 in the US, we have to consolidate all this. When we don't do so, I think we will have many difficulties.
Is that about supply chain? Is that about production?
This is about supply chain, yeah. This is about supply chain. When you take the nice kits outside, if you would consider all of them, each table being a company, and you pick a part, you get no drone at the end of the day. When you consolidate this, you get maybe 80% of what was the target. So I think this consolidation in the upcoming years, if you want to have a stable ecosystem in the supply chain system, is crucial.
And by that we mean local production in Europe?
I would say local production in Europe to be independent, yes. I think we need this.
I saw some disbelief in your eyes. Was that correct?
It was not disbelief.
It is just, don't want to shoot against the US, but we know what is the bureaucracy. If we get whatever element from the US, then it's not in our control anymore, also in terms of modification. And if we want to apply speed and get ready for adaptations, I think we must have this ecosystem.
So manned, unmanned systems, genes out of the bottle, supply chains and being able to produce locally rather than being dependent on China entirely, which I think is a big issue. Oleksandra, over to you. One or two things which will, again, perhaps some may be mentioned here. Anything to add on that, which is going to be, we have to face in the next 12, 24 months?
Well, we talk about smart systems, so we need to think about smart people as well, who will need to still operate them, design, develop, deploy, and we need to think about how we're going to prepare that, right? So, and what
do you mean academic personnel, universities? Do you mean people actually on a front line? Both and? Where would you think that the main...
At every stage, from the development to supply chain to training to the front line, and of course those who are providing these systems.
If you have to prioritize, would that be frontline or the universities?
I see it as a system, so there is not only one kind of part.
I'm saying is it takes 12 to 15 years to develop one engineer or scientist working at the capacity, and then people in the front line, you don't have to have 15 years.
Well, I think that the system still needs to be simple and easy to understand, so maybe then the technology won't be deployed. So if that's not that, maybe there are some other options that are more effective. And of course, I think there are different challenges that we can split for different parts, for government and for defense, for, of course, those R&D and continuous working on those
Including
issues.
working at scale.
Yeah, and also the military who actually will be using those systems. So if it is easy to use, easy to understand, implement, of course, that's great, but there are challenges on the way. And if the experienced operator can still do better and more effective and faster, so I think that's important. But we need to think about those cases that, for example, in military scenarios will help with decision making and, of course, fasten that OODA loop.
So no smart system without smart governance on the ground.
Yeah, we need smart systems, smart governments, and
Right.
we need to move on from just a system or a specific part to a broader part to the ecosystem and how that could be integrated in different platforms. Today we have drones, tomorrow there will be some other systems that could be as equally as efficient.
There are already, we must not forget that we have a lot of legacy systems. We should not forget them on the way. I mean, there will be many, many new ones, but we have plenty of old, not old, but legacy systems who must be part of the future battlefield.
And I think that's the context that we're talking about.
Yeah.
So they are systems, but it's about their use. If we think about dual use, great, so there are systems that are more effective, but there are still as equally systems that create more problems. So
Enough problems in the panel here. Hedy, going forward.
I was going to mention supply chains and sovereign production, but since it's already been mentioned, I'll go to another one, which is someone I think in the opening panel said that a week in Ukraine in terms of how useful it is for companies is comparable to a year on a test range in a Western country. And why is that constant feed of feedback, working together with the end users? I mean, companies are not going to Ukrainian warfighters with TRL-9 products that have been developed for years and years. But the fact that we have these breakthroughs there are because they get input constantly. So how do we, if there is once a time when we cannot do that in Ukraine anymore, how do we replicate that
Right.
in our own countries, in our own armed forces, so that we're not in a situation where we need a year on a test range to get the impact of a week in Ukraine?
And I think the fact that Drone Coalition is working on those questions, that could be that platform that could look at this.
To keep up the speed. Andis, and then we have open questions for the panelists.
Yes.
Andis?
Yes, from a legal perspective, main concern, of course, are these autonomous weapons. And I understand that due to electronic warfare, drones often lose the signal and communication, and it is very useful if they have autonomous targeting capabilities. And as a concerned lawyer, then of course the answer would be that there should always be a possibility to abort a mission or to have a human intervention. But on the other hand, it must be possible for a country to develop and produce capable weapons. And the fact that we don't have any common understanding around the world as to what is the threshold, what are the standards of permissible, it may turn out that if these requirements are applied too rigorously, then one party could be at a disadvantage, and this is something.
Especially when Alexander's point, adversaries, they might not play with rules. They will break all the rules just to win.
Yeah,
we have to hit the targets. I think it was one of the points was
sometimes it's not even so clear-cut what is breaking rules, because especially as concerns AI powered weapons, then they may behave more specifically and one day, and depending on the data that they have, they may perform quite poorly on another day. So it sometimes I think if the concept is right, then the issue whether the law is broken is sometimes depends on whether the system performs as designed. So the quality sometimes can be key to the actual effects of a weapon, whether the international law is broken or not.
So design, intention, and deployment, almost inevitability of unmanned autonomous systems, the smart systems and integration with legacy, the smart systems and smart governance and deployment on the ground. And then we had complex issues of scalability. And Kadi, your point was regarding the main challenges. Kadi?
Sorry.
Your main point regarding next challenges going forward would be the complexity?
I would say scaling and the fact that...
Affordability as well.
Pardon?
Affordability and scaling.
Affordability and scaling, yeah.
Great. We have questions from the audience. Is this correct?
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. Thank you, Viesturs, for this intense moderating. It seems like you don't let anything slip off the hook here. So that's why we're here. Yes, and regarding Helsing, the question is Helsing AI looking for testing grounds for their swarm-capable strike drones? If yes, would you consider testing them at Celia military drone polygon here in Latvia?
That was a long question. Did we get the question?
That's a very concrete one. Yes, we absolutely are. We are looking all over Europe for different sites for testing. So I don't know who you are who put that question forward, and I know we have already been in touch with people in Latvia, but please do approach me afterwards.
Well, thank
That was
you.
very nice. A quick question, quick answer. Fantastic. Where go forward? Fantastic.
Yeah,
We have more?
Yeah, it's go. Let's
You
proceed. Yeah.
Find each other after the panel, obviously.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. How can AI even be without the USA as the main software and hardware is coming from there? Yeah. You already touched upon it. Please direct your questions to somebody specifically, because this seems like for the whole
Who wants
panel.
to pick this up? This is a challenging one. Did we hear the question right?
No,
I think we have to repeat the question again.
The question, how can AI even be without the USA as the main software and hardware supplier coming from
Are
there?
we independent? Can we stay local here?
Well, software-wise, for sure. Compute-wise, AI comes in all sorts of sizes and shapes. So there's no one AI. So there are, more powerful compute platforms that are, a bit harder to source elsewhere. But then on the lighter side of AI models, there's a variety of options, and they're
Locally, you mean?
well, Europe.
Right.
Friendly countries in Asia, but yeah, it is a challenge potentially. When we are looking at large data sets and complex AI models. So hardware-wise, I think it's a valid point.
Anyone wants to take the question?
I mean, yes, there are some dependencies, but frankly speaking, you just need to start. Helsing was founded in 2021, and the founders sometimes say it wasn't founded because we thought it's such, defense and AI together, that's such a congested space that everyone's trying to get into it, right? Quite the opposite. They say the reason they founded the company is they were afraid that no one in Europe would try to get into this space. So you just need to start building.
So we should have started yesterday, but thankfully we're starting right about last year, 2 to 3 years. You don't seem to be very optimistic from your...
Well, compute-wise, when we, hardware-wise, specifically for large data sets, that does not happen fast, might never happen. Eventually, hopefully will, we will have the capabilities here locally, within Europe. Software-wise, I think, we don't have any specific limits.
Right.
The data, the training data is somewhat of a limiting factor, but in most applications, in most tactical scenarios, those needs can be addressed, with the type of software that can be built here locally in Europe.
You're a sort of decent optimist about this.
Yeah.
I think we also should not give the impression that without AI nothing is working.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So the manned-unmanned teaming demonstrator I was explaining before, there's almost no AI inside.
Yeah.
So and it's working quite well.
And one more thing to add there, we often say AI when in fact, it's computer vision algorithms that are deployed there more often than maybe AI. So these terms are kind of interchangeably often used when in fact, engineers, always want you to kind of stick to the fundamentals, computer vision is computer vision and AI models is AI models. It's a different type of technology. So,
but as the field matures, I think this is a challenge, formidable challenge we have to keep in mind. I would assume that is the
It remains a challenge, but a lot of things are also working with just a small portion of AI.
Which is good news for us. Yeah. Do we have any more questions?
Yeah, quite a few.
Great, let's move on.
Yep.
Just taking time here.
What are some military drone development directions that seems promising but may turn out to be false leads or unsustainable in the practice?
Do we have somebody who's in this intended to, or all the panel?
Not yet. So
Not yet.
Please.
So anyone who wants to pick it up? What is the false starts of promising technologies?
Well, if I may, I think
let the bubble burst.
Yeah, I think there is a misconception of drones replacing artillery. I'm not a believer in that. I think artillery will continue to be something military will continue to rely upon across the world. Again, not a military expert, but military experts will explain you why exactly. So I think that is maybe one misconception. We see FPV drones, the first-person view drones used heavily in Ukraine, but that again, at times it is out of scarcity, and often, they would prefer to have artillery instead, but it's just, what they can get their hands on, and that's not necessarily representative of, what a Western country would plan for, having time and having resources to
stocks and piles.
Yeah, to prepare.
Oleksandra, please.
I would just slightly disagree. And
all right. Always disagreement, more than welcome.
I would just say that, of course, every legacy system is there to have a place, and including artillery. But if you talk to Ukrainians, and they also didn't plan to fight this war as it is, with drones. But if you think about the prolonged conflict, and of course, cost is key, and you need to try to scale and, of course, innovate and use those systems in combination. For example, drones have, again, speed up that response, even using the artillery from minutes to, from half an hour to 3 to 5 minutes. Again, we're talking about not replacing, but I want you to see it more from the perspective of supporting the systems and working in operation. If you ask them, would I like another artillery, shell, or thousands of drones? Of course, drones would be the answer. On the other hand, of course, I'm not saying that drones solve every problem, and therefore we don't need the system. So they'll be still there. But if we again get back to that question in terms of military technology, I think what we see failed, we won't see on the battlefield right now. And again, something that works and is effective, we will see it at scale, and that's something to watch.
But anything else besides these two contentious points that you think are false starts or false promises that we should perhaps be wary of? Anything else to add here?
Well, just what I mentioned at the beginning, I think it's a little bit of a misperception that we take everything what we see in the Ukraine as the reference scenario of what we could see in 5 years.
Right.
So we must really consider there are legacy systems. We must integrate those systems. We must do something that we get air dominance, that our soldiers are not lying in trenches. I mean, all respect what is currently happening, and really congratulations to Ukraine that they did so well so long. Yeah, but this is not the first day of the war where we want to. This is not where we want to be at the first day of the war.
Going forward, Kadi, please comment.
I was thinking, and I don't actually have an answer. I actually want to challenge the question. Because I think we need to have a lot of false starts. If we are developing something and we're developing them in the labs and we only bring them out when we know for sure that this is the right one, it's probably going to be like 3 years too late, that capability. So the right thing to do is to have lots of false starts, but then fail really quickly and learn from that, and then get to where you need to go.
I think it was more about the hype issue, that not buying things which are perhaps of limited use when you actually could do more with something more simple, which are tried and true.
But that again, you can, you try things, you see that's not the right thing, it's maybe overhyped, you need to turn to
nature of
something
innovation.
else.
More questions coming?
Yes. Name a few useful skills or tools needed for better learning and adapting in future drone world.
That's a long question. Do we get the question? Everybody?
Yeah.
I think we have to repeat. No, are we good, Oleksandra? Good? Go ahead.
Name a few useful skills or tools needed for better learning and adapting in future drone world.
Go ahead.
Well, I'll start, of course. So some of the best skills to have, well, first is a continuous research and development, continuous like looking at the broader picture as well as a specific cases, just to see what works, what not. And I think what's important is really that a willingness to change and being flexible to observe, learn, adapt, and change your system. Again, getting back to the battlefield in Ukraine. So since 2022, some systems and some companies who were, of course, helping with their tools, who declined to change and that said that that's our system, it's expensive, and we're not going to change it. So they were not effective, no longer used. So those systems who were fast in their cycles, continuous cycle of learning, and adaptation. So that has become the learning adaptation battle. So it's important to have that skill to be willing to change and try to find those ways to be effective. Another skill, again, don't be afraid to fail, as as weird as it sounds, but you have to fail, learn fast and improve. So you would appreciate, so those drones that are there, they were not exactly like that, potentially like from the first time, so that's really important. And again, the key, so in order to understand what is happening is learning with Ukraine. Of course, there may be changes in 5-10 years, but let's wait till that happens.
Right. So a bit of Charles Darwin here about liberty and evolution. Any more takers for this?
Well, maybe just to add, I think it is. I can fully understand what was said in the morning. 1 week in the Ukraine is like 1 year in a test range. And then the answer is we need very sophisticated simulation capabilities. So we need to have capabilities, model-based system engineering, simulation environments where we can really also train users on this kind of assets. Because we cannot dream about having hundreds, thousands of these assets flying somewhere in Europe, or there are very limited places where you could do so.
So that's why Latvia is doing a great job with their Celia test range, and that needs to, be further developed, further expanded. I think that's a great capability that we can offer to our European and NATO allies in general. I think that is one very important development that we have here locally for the industry, local and
for drone coalition as well.
Well, that too. This event too. Is amazing. So we just have to keep doing what we do.
3 minutes. How many questions do we have there?
1.
All right, great. Oh, fantastic.
You've already touched upon this subject, but here's from the audience. If AI and automated systems do not require a human to make the final decision, who is accountable if we have collateral damage resulting in the death or destruction of protected entities?
Oh, that's a panel right there. Sorry. Andis, you'll have to take some of that and then you'll have to finish.
Yes, the answer is that...
you have the answer. That's great.
Yes, I have the answer. It is always humans who are accountable. Machines are never accountable. Basically, if weapons are used in an indiscriminate manner, the states could be responsible, and also there is international criminal law and national criminal law, according to which commanders and people actually deploying those weapons may potentially be held accountable. So machines are never accountable.
Agris, any comments on this one? You leave it to Andis.
No, I think, eventually there is always a human, accountable for that decision, to allow a system to make that decision autonomously. So humans are still the ones accountable for it.
Which is a little scary, isn't it? Any more comments on that? That's the final. All right, great.
Maybe one additional comment is that with respect to artificial intelligence systems, of course you can find somebody accountable, but since it is based on data and there are many sort of different stakeholders involved, actually to find the real cause of something going wrong may be more complicated, because you have a platform, you have a software, you have a data sets, you have somebody training those drones on certain data sets. So many people are involved, and then eventually there is a commander who gives an order and releases the drone. So it's a teamwork, and since these systems become increasingly complicated, there's increasing possibility of something going wrong. And for that reason, they need to be maintained and in more thoroughly than maybe some conventional weapons.
So 10 seconds, what we have here, we have most likely the genie out of the bottle with unmanned systems, governance of legacy systems and smart systems, integrating them in both the research lab and on the ground, being affordable and making sure that we stay within the range that we have civilians protected. With that, round of applause for our fantastic panelists. Agris Ķipurs, CEO at Origin Robotics, Hendrik Sippl, Airbus Defence and Space, Oleksandra Molloy, University of South Wales, Senior Lecturer, Kadi, Director of European Engagement at Helsing, and Andis, Ozoliņš, Attorney at Law at WALLESS. Round of applause. Thank you so much.
And of course, our spectacular moderator, Viesturs Celmiņš.